Hello and welcome to Paul's e-learning podcast. My name is Paul Andrews and this is my podcast about using free and open source tools and technologies to work smarter, not harder. On this week's show, I want to, discuss a talk I gave a number of weeks back about how businesses can use Google Apps for Business to work smarter, not harder, again, without stretching their budget, without breaking the bank. So we'll get straight into it then. So basically I was asked to give this talk to a number of different businesses in Telford, giving them an overview of what Google Apps for Business are. And it's actually a term used, it's like an umbrella term used to describe several different types of app that Google provides. And so what I did in the talk was to basically give a brief overview of each of those tools. And I started out by saying to everyone that Google Apps are actually free to individuals. So anything I'm going to mention today, if you want to check it out, you can do, and it won't cost you a penny. The only reason you might want to invest in Google Apps for Business is if you want to brand any of these services with your own kind of company logo. So you give each of your employees their own company managed Google account. But for any of you who are in a small company, or maybe you're just sole trader or something, you don't have to spend any money on Google Apps for Business. You can actually use your own personal Google account and just kind of crack on with it. So the tools we looked at, although there are lots and lots of different apps that Google provides which come under this umbrella term of Google Apps, there were kind of 6 key ones that I wanted to cover in the talk, and they were Google Mail, Google Calendar, Google Drive and Google Documents. They kind of come as together, YouTube video conferencing, and Google Sites. So what I'm going to do in this podcast is give you a very brief overview of each of those services and describe how they can help you and your business. So we'll look at the first one then, and the first one we'll talk about is Google Mail. So the idea is that for those of you who are familiar with Microsoft Outlook and having Exchange accounts, Google offers their own alternative called Google Mail, and anyone can have a Google Mail account, and you can have a number of different Google Mail accounts if you want to. The main advantage of having a Google Mail account, though, is that Google gives you a vast amount of storage space on which you can actually store emails and attachments and all that kind of stuff. So for any of you who are currently running, if you're in a business and you're running your own Microsoft Exchange servers, one of the common complaints, and particularly, I find this when I go into educational establishments, is that people tend to run out of storage space on their email accounts. And so to get around this, they have to archive their emails, and it's a bit of a faff and a bit of a pain. Using Google Mail, this problem can be avoided because Google Mail gives you so much storage, you never really have to archive all your emails. It's perfectly possible to have every email that anyone's ever sent to you. The minimum amount of storage space you get is 2 gigabytes per email account, but this can be upped if you want it to be. So Google Mail is a fantastic free tool, and if you're not already using it, I would suggest you do so. One of the things I do for Paul's e-learning resources, and this is a nice little trick you can do with Google Mail, is Google Mail will let you set up a free account, and then it will let you use that account to send emails on behalf of another email address. So because I've bought the domain name paulselearning.com and set up the email address, my email address is paul@paulselearning.com, what's actually happening is my Google Mail account, which is a completely different email address, receives all emails that come from that paul@paulselearning.com. And also, if I send an email from my Google account, it sends it via that alias address as well. So that costs me, basically that just cost me the price of setting up the domain name, so it's kind of peanuts, but it lets you essentially set up a branded email address and have it all managed within Google systems completely free of charge. And of course, the other advantage to using the Google system is then it means that I can send emails from my business account, the paulselearning.com account, via the Gmail app, which is again free, on my phone, on my tablet, and all of those devices as well. So after we kind of have a brief overview of what Gmail is and how people might want to kind of get involved with it, and at the very least just set an account up and compare it to their existing kind of Microsoft account, we then turned our attention onto Google Calendar. Now, for those of you who are familiar with using Microsoft Outlook, the concept of a computerized calendar hopefully won't be news to you. But so Google Calendar does pretty much everything that Microsoft Calendar does, but with a few key additions. And these additions are essentially the ability to publish the calendar to the internet. So you can actually, let's say you are involved in a business where you want to show your clients when you might be available or not. You can actually have a Google Calendar, and it's worth noting you can have as many Google Calendars per account as you want to as well. But you can have a Google Calendar that says, where you are going to be at specific locations and times and stuff like that. But if you publish that to the internet, rather than divulging all of that information, the Google Calendar will just say to a member of the public that you are busy, you are unavailable at this time. So you can use it for essentially public scheduling, which is really, really handy. So I tend to use Google Calendar for paulzealand.com to essentially tell me where I'm going to be on a daily basis. I will use it if people book me in to give workshops or training. So everything I'm doing for the business is on my Google Calendar. And again, there are free Google Calendar apps that you can download for your tablet, for your mobile phone devices. And it will sync as well with existing calendar software that you might have. So if you're trying to coordinate a particular project or a team of people, or just increase your communication about a series of events that you're running, you might want to give Google Calendar a bit of a look. So then we turned our attention onto Google Drive and Google Docs. Now, what Google Drive is, you might be familiar with the term cloud storage, or you might have heard of a service called Dropbox, which is very, very popular. The idea is that rather than having your files stored on a USB stick or a hard drive, something that's physically in the room with you, you can store these files on the internet, on a network drive or a hard drive, if you like, which is online somewhere, and you can access and edit these files on any kind of mobile device or a laptop or a tablet or, whatever you've got. Well, Google offers their version of this, and it's called Google Drive. And for free, you get 2 gigabytes of storage space in your Google Drive, and you can add any number of different types of document into that Google Drive. So that if you put something in there, it's safe, and you can share it if you want to with other people. And when you share it with people, you can give them the ability to view a particular file or to edit that file. And this is where Google Docs comes in, because Google Docs is built into Google Drive. So if Google Drive is, if you imagine it's like an online hard drive or an online USB stick that you can access, Google Docs is like having an online version of Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, and Excel. There are other aspects to Google Docs as well, but those are the 3 main ones. It gives you the ability to edit those files that you've uploaded for free from within a web browser or from any portable device you've got from your tablets and your smartphones. So what this means for businesses is that if you are paying an awful lot of money for Microsoft products, you're forking out for licenses for Microsoft Office, if you made the switch to Google Drive and Google Docs, you wouldn't have to fork out any money for Microsoft licenses anymore because you wouldn't need it. The other thing it lets you do is collaborate with people on documents from anywhere in the world. So rather than working on a particular document, sending a copy of that document to, let's say, 5 or 10 people, and then having them all look at it, make their changes and send it back to you, so you end up with like 5 or 10 versions of the same document that you've then got to collate. You can just upload one document over to Google Drive, send everybody the web link, and then they can edit and collaborate on that document in real time, so at the same time with each other or at different times in the day. But the point is, the document can come together collaboratively, and it keeps every single version, every single edit that everyone has made to that document. So if you've got someone who's made a mistake to they've wrecked the document, you can just roll back those changes really, really easily. So it's a fantastic collaboration tool, but it also means that big files aren't being emailed around anywhere, and nothing can get lost because it's all safe and secure on your Google Drive. After having looked at Gmail and Google Calendar and Google Drive and Google Docs for kind of collaborating on word process files and presentations and spreadsheets and all that kind of stuff, we then turned our attention to YouTube, which is owned by Google. So if you've got a Google account, which is free, you can log into YouTube and start uploading your own videos. One of the newest services that Google now offers as part of the YouTube service is the ability to broadcast live to YouTube using its Google Hangouts feature. And again, this is free of charge. So what this lets you do is have free online video conferences, which can either be private if you want to just use them as what's called a Google Hangout, or public, so they broadcast live on YouTube using something called Google Hangouts on Air. Now, previously, if you wanted to do kind of a multi-user video conferencing, it would have cost you a small fortune. Even if you wanted to use Skype, you needed to have a pro account to have a multi-user video conference, whereas Google lets you do it for free. So if you want to have meetings with people, but those people can't physically get all in the same room, or maybe it's just not financially viable, you can do this really quickly and easily using this Google Hangouts feature. And again, Google Hangouts is free and it works from a web browser. You can also get a free Google Hangouts app for your tablet and your smartphone. So even if people haven't got their laptops on them, they can still take part in that conversation with you when they're mobile, when they're out and about. So this might save you some money. So it's worth checking out at Google Hangouts. You don't need anything fancy equipment-wise to actually take part in this. You need a 20 quid webcam and a computer, or if you've got a smartphone or a tablet, that's all you need, and you can download the app free from the App Store. finally, the last thing we looked at in terms of the Google Apps service was something called Google Sites. Now, a lot of people, when they start up in business, realize that they do need their own website, but they do pay more money than they need to. A lot of people actually pay for a domain name, website hosting, and they might then decide to put something like, WordPress onto a web server and pay a web designer to use that WordPress installation to create them a website. And what I was telling people at the talk is that although you do need to buy your own domain name, you don't need to spend any more money on anything else, because you can attach that domain name to a Google site. And Google Sites is another free service that Google offers to people, and it lets you create your own website. The websites are hosted by Google. You haven't got to pay for any hosting, and they integrate seamlessly with all of the other Google apps. So everything I was telling you about before, about the documents and the calendar and all that kind of stuff, you can integrate and embed those files, those calendars into the website really easily. So if you want an example of a Google site, if you go to paulselearning.com, that's actually powered by a Google site, and it's not costing me anything to run. So I'm using this free service, and this came as news to a lot of people who are paying, even if it's an initial setup charge and then £20 a month for the website hosting, that's 240 quid a year. They could save that by making the switch over to Google Sites dead easy. So one of the things I said to everyone was, look, give this a go. And in terms of being able to edit and update your site, it doesn't require kind of any technical expertise. It is really as easy as using a word processor to write a letter or something. It's just dead simple. So you can have as many of these Google Sites as you like, and the Google Sites can be public or private or something in between. So for those of you who are running businesses where you have maybe you produce some work that's bespoke and unique to a particular client of yours, you can say to Google Sites that you want part of your website to be publicly accessible, but then you can also hive off a section of your website which can only be seen by particular clients, and each client can have their own unique area on your Google site, and they will never be aware of one another's existence. So it's quite handy if you want them to provide that kind of service.
Please hang up and try again.
So after we provided the overview to Google Apps, and again, I alluded to the fact that there are many, many more apps. I've just scratched the surface here of Google Mail, Calendar, Google Drive, Google Docs, free video conferencing using YouTube, and free websites using Google Sites. I then called up a free cost savings calculator. Now, all of this stuff I'm talking about is going to be linked to from the podcast, so you can check out the savings calculator and see how much money you can actually save for this. I did mention at the start of the podcast that Google Apps is free, but if you wanted to have it branded with your own business, then you would need to pay for it, and the amount of money it costs is £3.30 per user per month plus taxes. Okay, so if you wanted something branded and you've got it yourself and a couple of employees, it's going to cost you £3.30 a month for you and £3.30 a month for each of your employees that you've actually got. You can actually take out an annual plan as well if you want to, and that costs £33 per user per year. That gives you a little bit of discount. Effectively, it's going to give you 2 months free. Again, there are links to this on the webpage I will put next to the podcast itself. And then the other thing I've set up, if you want to have a try, I've set up a Google Docs sandpit, so you can access and try out Google Docs without having to make an account. So you can come in here and just have a play around with it and see if it's right for you. And there's also, if you want to, a free 30-day trial of Google Apps for Business, so you can see how that compares to the free offering. So that's about all we've got time for this week. I hope you found the podcast useful. I'll put a web link next to the podcast so you can get access to everything that's been mentioned here. But if you do have any questions, feel free to email me or tweet me at Paul's eLearning. Otherwise, thank you very much for listening, and I'll speak to you again soon.